Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are on this bastard planet. What happened to Dave Chappelle? The cruelty of sticks and stones is a sign of the times. I'm telling you, listen, if you haven't seen the show, please go and see it. It is genius. It is fantastic. And it's really nice that he has got after those bastards who are part of the cancel culture, who use Twitter to destroy people. Not just celebrities, other people are getting destroyed. I mean, we've already seen recently that Zoe bitch uh, caused a guy to commit suicide because of what she put on Twitter. And numerous people have said, "Why didn't you go to the police with it?" You know, I think something's got to be done. Some law, perhaps, or some way of. You see, the problem is the people who use Twitter extensively are those bastards on the left, and they can get away with anything, anything. But people who are on the right are not able to get away. What happens is they get shut down. There's not much you can do about it other than to have other competitors that can challenge Twitter, um, such as Gab, which will take, unfortunately, a number of years. But Twitter didn't come into prominence until, the Hudson Bay, when the plane landed in Hudson Bay. I think that's when it became, if I remember, um, it became a news source uh, from that incident when the pilot um, was able to land the plane onto the Hudson River when he lost both engines and glided it and just did a fantastic. I mean, you couldn't do any better. Onto the river, landed it onto the river, and not without any loss of life. Fantastic. I think that's what brought Twitter to prominence. So, but this show really showed. I mean, Chappelle has had enough of these twats who are just constantly bitching and wanting to destroy comedy. And he's just fighting back at them. You know, Chappelle is completely attuned with the mean spirit of 2019. That's what's throwing off his old fans. I'm surprised this is a really good piece from the Salon. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a left leaning. It usually produces, really poor, but this is a really good piece, reasonably balanced. So it's so it talks about David Letterman, who gave a rather than telling jokes at the time of the uh, 9/11 disaster, gave a monologue and a solemn acknowledgement. This became the pause the nation needed before feeling permission to laugh again in the wake of horrific tragedy. Nearly 20 years later, another great Dave Chappelle, has handed a different permission slip to Americans, one giving folks the green light to laugh at tragedies and, more to the point, the victims and survivors. I mean, it was quite. I mean, you need to see the show. It is brilliant. Honestly, it was just brilliant comic genius. Maybe that's not being fair. The 9/11 attacks resulted in the death of nearly 3,000 people and the injuries of more than 6,000. A massive cultural shifting calamity by any feeling person's definition. In his new Netflix special, Sticks and Stones, the objects of Chappelle's irony are folks ostensibly making their personal fucking tragedies everybody else's problems by using them to perpetrate career death and reputation homicide upon celebrities. These people, he tells us, have made him a victim blamer. He guns for two men at the centre of leaving Netherlands who alleged that late pop music idol Michael Jackson molested them when they were 7 and 10 years old, and cancel culture advocates who took aim at his personal friends like Kevin Hart and another A-list comic who was good friends with before he died in that terrible wanking incident. I don't know who he was talking about. I'll have to look at it again. Who he was talking about, or maybe he didn't give a name. Then there's the easily offended. I couldn't stop laughing when I heard this. Alphabet people. Oh, he's shorthand for the LGBT wankers. Particularly, as he says, the confusing teas. As in the terrible teas. The Acme 2 movement, organisers of school shooting drills, they've all gotten out of hand and need to be taken down a peg. Chappelle even takes a moment to stereotypically mimic Asians, which he diffuses later on by reminding the audience that his wife is Asian. He did it really well. Oh, God. The entirety of Sticks and Stones is structured around such topic by signaling to those who are true believers in his genius that it's just a fucking joke. Only words. This earns his ability to punch down. In that context, he stated position that he doesn't believe Michael Jackson's accusers is about as true as his tall tale about peppering an opioid. One of the things that Americans love saying that word, opioid. Opioid. Opioid addict who had supposedly broken into his home with birdshot fired from his shotgun, which is to say, not true at all. And perhaps he doesn't really mean it when he says, even if Jackson molested children, long pause, it's Michael Jackson. I know more than half the people in this room have been molested in their lives. But it wasn't no goddamn Michael Jackson, was it? This kid had his dick sucked by the king of pop. All we get is awkward Thanksgivings for the rest of our lives. Oh, yes, perhaps it's just words. But to paraphrase a portion of one of his bits, damn it if this angle isn't confusing. While several critics and comedians liken the latest from Chappelle's taken to a grumpy middle-aged uncle who refuses to evolve with the times, I have a different theory. On the whole, Sticks and Stones exists as a defiant design to intentionally offend the wankers of the audience Chappelle deems to be thin-skinned and easily offended, too quick to find offense, while serving up simple, low-bar yucks to anyone yearning for validation of their anti-PC stance. Indeed, it may end up being one of the defining comic specials of our time. Not a particularly well-written piece there, but anyway, it is what it is. Because our time is defined by cruelty, absolutely. Me first, to hell with anyone else, cruelty. My feelings have been hurt, and you need to be punished for it. You need to lose your job, blah, blah, blah. And then you need to be thrown into prison. The shock being felt by Chappelle's fans who fell in love with Killing Them Softly, circa 2000, or the Dave who walked away from Chappelle's show, and a $50 million deal with Comedy Central, vintage 2005, are the ones who still see Chappelle as a man concerned about socially irresponsible and paying attention to things like your ethics. As 2006, Dave tells Oprah Winfrey about during their famous conversation on her show. Apparently, there's a huge difference between a cable network $50 million deal in 2005 and a Netflix deal for $60 million in the present. These are the same wankers who may have been incensed by Chappelle's soft offer to give Donald Trump a chance during his post-election monologue on Saturday Night Live. What they should have been paying attention to was the part where he said, "All my butt friends who have money said the same thing when Trump got elected. They said, 'That's it, bro. I'm out. I'm leaving the country. You coming with us?' Nah, I'm good, dog. I'm going to stay here and get this tax break and see how it works out." Because that's how it is being Dave Chappelle. I mean, because it was all fuckery. It's all fucking, I'm running out of America. Donald Trump is coming into the country. Why didn't they jump out, run to Africa? Why didn't they do that? Because they're full of shit. Just that nasty bitch, Dina Dunham, or whatever the fuck you call her, who was saying, Lena Dunham, that's it, bitch, who was shouting and screaming she was going to run to Canada. Why the fuck haven't you gone? Why the fuck haven't you gone? Silly bitch. These are the people caught off guard at the transphobic jokes in his 2017 set worked out during his Radio City Music Hall residency, which also turned up in his first Netflix specials. Well, why is it transphobic? Why is he using that fucking term? And not just say trans jokes. That's what it is. Only to be smoothed by his 2018 interview with Van Jones. We are living in a time when there's got to be more cultural sensitivity. October 2018, tells Jones, later adding, even a guy like me that's just writing jokes, I have to listen more than I've ever had to listen because the gripes is going so fast and furious, and it's not I'm not dismissive of people's gripes. Might sound like it on stage, but I listen. Yeah, you listened hard, and it was coming thick and fast, and he's now had enough, and he's now showing all those bastards out there who've been griping and bitching that he's had enough. He's had enough of cancel culture. But October 2018 is a long time ago. Long enough for Chappelle's views on transgender people to evolve to a place of befuddlement. But not long enough for Chappelle to temper his anger at cancel culture, turning his world into celebrity hunting season. Throughout his career, Chappelle consistently reminds us of the complicated territory comedians travel in relation with their fans, without whom they wouldn't be working. And yet, the most successful comedians tend to be the ones who resist the roles and labels fan assigned to them, who test the limits of their craft and fan loyalty with it, as in Ricky Gervais, when he first did the, what was it called, the Grammy Awards, and just literally blasted Hollywood with Downey Jr. having a fucking hissy fit, throwing his toys out of the pram and losing his shit. And he was just consistently brilliant on that show. Consistently brilliant. And I've looked back on his shows and you just can't stop laughing. It's a laugh a second. Not a minute, a second. Gervais is just brilliant. Pissing off every single Hollywood actor who thought they couldn't be touched. So we want our comedians to be some version of truth tellers, even if we don't hold them to a stand of being entirely factual. We at least expect something genuine from them. We also want them to remind us of our shared humanity, even in cases where the socio-economic divide between them and us is vast. I think words aren't what hurts people as much as the intentions behind the words. The 2006 version of Chappelle observes in episode of Icon Lasts, whatever the fuck it was. I think that's what I think that's been one of the reasons why I could say some pretty ugly words that would traditionally hurt people. But when they hear it, they feel like this isn't hurting me because they can feel the intention behind the words, just in how I'm using it. That episode is an interesting one to watch in the context of the current furore over sticks and stones, since it features Chappelle in conversation with Maya Angelou, specifically about words. To the late Angelou, words hold tremendous power. The boyfriend of Angelou's mother raped her when she was 8 years old. Wow. He was found guilty and was jailed for only one day. So there were times when women were not listened to when vile things like this happen. Everybody knows that. But it's been addressed. Everything has to evolve. Everything is still evolving. But it's how people decide to evolve things is what, whether people will, if we blame too many people, innocent people, that's where the problem is, when innocent people get caught up in the crossfire of blame. He was found guilty and was jailed for only 1 day. That was at a different time because she was I think she was in her 80s, late 80s, coming up into the 90s when she died. But days after his release, he was kicked to death. So she didn't get the justice in the so-called justice system, which was massively corrupt. But the justice was administered by the community because this justice system wasn't working, didn't work. And he was killed, as it should be. But this event led her to stop speaking for years because she believed her words killed a man. Clearly, it wasn't her fault. He deserved it, and that's good. But we are speaking of today's cruelty. October 18 also happens to be the month that the Atlantic's Adam Schuer wrote about the delight Donald Trump's base takes in watching the people it loathes suffer under his policies. The cruelty is the point, is the story's headline. And it became a recurring refrain on social media, accompanying the sharing of stories representing new lows in morality. I can't pronounce that. If art is shaped by the times in which an artist lives, then surely we cannot be surprised when some artists capitalize on that moment's reigning emotions. Our times also are defined by a lack of historic context and forgetting, which may explain why a comic so reverent of a woman who was also raped as a child during their 2006 meeting might find it perfectly okay to play his disbelief of Michael Jackson's accusers for rowdy giggles. I remember, if I remember, that it was, he was telling one particular joke or something about Michael Jackson. The woman got up and was walking out and said she was raped at a young age, and I can't remember. He said something. It was, he said something like, "I'm sorry that you were raped, but it wasn't." Oh, I can't remember the joke. It wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't a joke, but it was not his fault. It was not anybody's fault. It is what it is. But you need to see. I mean, I've not explained it very well, but you need to see the show. It is brilliant, brilliant. Honestly, cruelty is a frequently used spice in all kinds of comedy. Cruelty is a frequently used spice in all kinds of comedy. Of course, even a guy like Jim Guthrie, who works as squeaky clean as you can imagine, is viciously cruel, but almost to himself. In 2019, when Cruelty is the headliner, the country's most successful stadium comic is killing it at every stop with unfettered screens about immigrants slapping political rivals with nicknames like Pocahontas. Cruelty is in fashion, so can we be surprised when an artist widely understood to be a genius in his own form seizes our attention by Jackson Pollocking up the place with a set filled with jokes that would have walked other rooms had they been delivered by so-called lesser comedians. I don't know. This is just not very well written. Anyway, so the point is, you need to watch it. There's too much stuff here to go through. I'm not going to go through all this, but just to say, look, as it says here, Chappelle is not obliged to comfort Middle America. He isn't angling for a sitcom, nor does he seem overly concerned about the ethics that inspired him to walk away from $50 billion, and he said pounds, a decade and a half ago. As he frequently reminds his audience, he is a rich man who can retire to his Ohio farm and live his life and never perform again if he chooses. So all this nonsense is not going to do anything to him. He can keep coming back as many times as he wants. And if it gets too hot for Netflix and they decide to drop him, Hula or anybody else will pick him up. And I don't think even Netflix will dare drop him unless it gets so bad that it's really, really obviously terrible what he's talking about certain issues. So when you get the time, go and watch it. It's absolutely epic. It is brilliant. And I'm so happy that a comedian has come out and gone after all those bastards, all those twats on Twitter, the Twitter mob. As they say, the devil is always laughing harder than you. Good day.